Okay, then let us start with adjusting our components to use data. Because at the moment, as you can see, we're using static data and we want to see here the current date. In my case, it should show then the 26th of July. In this part, we will firstly create a signal. For that, we will create in the main header component a signal named current date. That will be a signal. For that, we have to import the signal from Angular. As you can see, it wants to have a type. In our case, it will be a string. Now it says that it's not initialized. That's now something we will change. Okay. First of all, we will quickly go over the core concepts of signals. For that, we will make a new signal. You can write it by easily typing signal. Then we want to import it. And here we typing in an initial value. So we're typing here firstly our static data into that one. So when we now look at the page, we see the data still because it's still be here. So if we're moving that one and look at the page, we don't have any data anymore here. What we now have to do to get the data out of the signal is to go into the template, and we have to use, as always for Angular, this twice curly brackets, and then we want to have the current date here. Because it's a signal, it's not a variable or an attribute, because the signal itself works like a function, which means you have to call it to get the current value. If we now look at it, we see again our static data. Alright. But now we want to have the current date here. What we can do now is, of course, we can kind of make a small function or a small getting data part of it by making a new date, current date object. Make a new date here. And with this, we can now build a string out of it. In our case, we want to make here a const current date string. And here we want to make a new templated string. If you're not knowing that one, it allows you to type in a $sign and then 2 curly brackets. And inside of it, you can then call functions or can get some data. And that one will directly be converted into a string at the end. So we will here make a local date string. And we want to have here dates. Firstly, in our case, we want to use the local that the user uses. And here we type date style full. And we can quickly take a look how this looks like at the moment. If we look now here, you see it is Friday, July 26th this year. That could also be fine, but we want to adjust it a little bit to have a little bit more details. Because at the moment, as you can see, we have here the day, ready to learn Angular 19, 20 and 21. This course covers everything new in this latest versions. From hydration, event replay, resource API, signal forms, we cover it all. You will get a complete playground app showcasing all features. Plus, we will build a weather app from scratch to implement everything hands-on. Full source code for both projects included. Check the link in the description. And the year and the day of the week. And what we need now is we want to have also the time of it. Firstly, we also do that by making here a space. This will then directly be converted to a space in the string, which means with this type of strings, you are allowed to make custom strings with data in it. Here we make then current date dot to local current date object to local time string, and here we want to have firstly again the local. We will use the user local, and here make hour should be a 2-digit, and also the minute should also be 2 digits. So now you can see also the time of the day. So what you now can do, because at the moment, as you can see, you have a lot more details that we had before. You can pass like an, for example, in that way you can use the English US local, or you can change the local here if you, I don't know, like German or so, then it would be converted in that way to the German version of it, which means we kind of give the browser the option, or we let the browser help us with parsing that data automatically. Okay. But what you can see now is, or what you could expect, is that if I would, for example, also provide second, you would see that it's getting exactly one time frame and not repeating that process over time. So for that one, we have a good option. That's something eventually you never heard of, but we have a function named interval. It's from RxJS that allows us to do something every time in a specific repeating, which means it is in JavaScript world, it's set interval in a kind of way. So, and we want to make an interval with a pipe and say it should map the data. We also have to import that one. And here we are inserting our logic that we have written here inside of that one. And what we now can do, and that's also something like this now is an observable, because this interval comes from RxJS that give us the possibility of observables, which means it is kindly like an object that has a value in it, and it provides us the newest value every time it get in that way here recalculated. And now the problem would be, or what we can do, say it like that, we can make here an empty string and can go inside of that one is calling current date. And in our example, we don't see the set function. The reason for that is that this typing here has to be a writable signal. If you look at the signal function, it's returning a a writable signal. And now we are able to call the set function and can say it should update our signal. And if we now look at it, it's not showing anything. The reason for that is that we have an observable that we need to subscribe. That's the overall way how to work with observables. If we now look, it's refreshing. But the problem is here, when we let it like that we're subscribing here and this never get closed. And that's like a data leak that we have here. And for that way, we want to use still this observable, but we want to make it the safe way. And the solution for that one is that we can use a function that also comes from Angular. It's named toSignal. And this function, if we're importing it, okay, it's not finding it at the moment, but it comes with Angular 17. This allows us to converting an observable into a signal. Core, and there's then an RxJS interop. So, and now is the trick that we can say this equals to signal. But now this thing returns a signal again, which means we have to go back to a signal definition. And whereas here, because of this map, we can now here return our current date string. Okay, and we have to adjust it to be string or undefined. That's fine. So, and now we have the same thing, but in a more cleaner way, because now we have this toSignal that converting an observable, in our case this interval, with the pipe map, and this map calculating the date with the current date, which means even if the interval has like a weird cycle, it should fix itself because it always gets the new date, and then converting it into a string that shows us the seconds and minutes and hours, and also the day and the year and the month, of course. Yeah, enough for them, which means now I will adjust it a little bit backwards that we not show the seconds, which means we only have then the minutes. Something different we can then do to improve the performance a little bit, because if we're not showing the seconds, we should also stay with the second interval to make sure that the minute jump happens at the right time. What we can do now to improve a little bit the performance is to make a distinct until changed. This one kind of says if the string here not changes, it will not be provided to the signal, which means we still get this information if the time changes. Alright, then the next part we want to adjust some other components.